let's stay on that, Mr. Weiss, just for a minute. When they go back and they study the scientists go back and study the Dust Bowl of the 30s. I find it curious in my reading that they blame the temperature of the oceans, the instability of the oceans, the change in the temperature between the Pacific and the Atlantic. I never hear them talk about carbon discharge. And these are all retroactive studies. These are taking today's standards and reapplying them back into that period. Can you explain in very short why?
I have not looked at the Dust Bowl aspect, but I will tell you this.
But the Dust Bowl is probably the
I understand it's the worst drought in America.
Drought change, yes, okay, but none of the climatologists and the scientists blame climate change. They're talking about what's happened with the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean and the jet stream. I'm troubled. I'm troubled when let me just characterize. I get a kick out of you. You've been here several times before our meetings. Remember that show, Bat Masterson? Do you remember that Have Gun Will Travel?
A little bit before my time, Mr. McKinley.
Well, perhaps it may be, but he was brought in when they needed someone with a gun, and you show up at all times to attack the carbon fuel industry, and you do a pretty good job of it, but it's based on, I think, a lot of ideology and not on the facts. If you go back to be able to prove some of these information that in the past, they just don't demonstrate. You're pushing an issue that just doesn't hold up. I'm just curious, do you support the idea of us exporting coal and gas out of America?
I believe that resources, and this is me speaking personally, not for the Center for American Progress Action Fund, I believe that resources that are developed from public lands, which are owned by every American in this room and all across the country, ought to be used for Americans. So that if we are expanding,
just across the board, should we be able to export? I don't know. Once gas gets in a pipeline, I don't know whether it's come from public lands or private lands. So when we're trying to ship natural gas out of this country and LNG to sell it to, you're opposed to that?
I believe that resources.
Yes or no? Just yes or no, please.
Well, it's not a yes or no question. I believe that
yes, it is. And then if you're not, then
resources produced from our land should be kept here. Resources of private land can be exported. There's your answer.
So, do you think America can afford to be having higher utility bills?
No, we need to make sure that.
But can we? You don't think we can afford it?
But remember, there are other prices included in the cost of burning coal than just the price of the coal and the land and the facility itself. For example, the healthcare costs from air pollution, mercury, soot, toxic chemicals, cancer-causing agents, is in the billions of dollars a year. And under the EPA rule says $3 of benefits for every $1 of cleanup costs.
They're already saying that the worst air is our air that's indoor, not our outdoor air. Even the EPA says it's 96 times worse indoors than our outdoor air. So
well, we ought to address indoor air pollution as well, but that doesn't mean we ought to spew thousands of pounds of mercury, which is a known neurotoxin.
And you well know that there's more mercury in a can of tuna fish than there is in a can of fly ash. So,
and where did the mercury get into the tuna fish? It came from air pollution.
We eat the tuna fish. We don't eat the fly ash. Let's go on to this thing. So what percent are you trying to get to in terms of fossil fuels? Where do you want us to take us when you come in with these kind of testimonies? Do you want us down with coal to eliminate coal, or are you trying to get us down to 20%? What's your vision that you think would be right for America?
I think what's right for America is to use our resources in a way.
Percentage-wise.
I won't give you a figure, but I think we ought to use our resources in a way that allows us to also not have kids have asthma attacks, not have pregnant women not be able to eat.
You don't know whether the asthma attack is caused by the outdoor air or the indoor air quality.
No, we do know that. We don't know whether asthma is caused by that, but there are studies by Harvard University and other medical schools that show that asthma attacks increase with the frequency of air pollution. We're not saying it causes asthma, but it causes asthma attacks.
Thank you. And you don't know whether that asthma attack has been caused by dust mites, aerosols, or formaldehyde sprays in your house. So let me go.
I'll be happy to provide some studies to you for the record.
You have some other information that indicates that anything other than the fact that the CO2 emissions now in this country are the lowest they've been in 20 years?
I don't believe that's accurate, sir. I believe that they have gone down in recent years, but 2005.
EIA just published that too.
Okay, well, I'll have to. I will double check that.
Read up before you come here to testify again.
Okay, and who was Bat Masterson's top opponent? Because you are quite a worthy one, sir.
I don't know his name either, but Mr. Sullivan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Weiss, it was interesting when you were discussing your comments earlier, you said that the oil and gas industry gets this handout subsidy. I think you're referring to intangible drilling. And I was wondering, how long, you've worked for the Center for American Progress, and you've worked there a while, I'm sure. Do you ever travel around the country at all to go to conferences or anything like that? Yes or no?
Well, that's a two-part question. Yes, I travel around the country. No, I generally don't attend conferences.
Do you go, but you travel for your job? Ever?
Sometimes.
Yeah. And when you do that, you have